so long as a society have we thought that it's the genetic makeup of someone rather than the environment? I mean, why do we believe that?
Well, we still think it. I mean, that's still the mantra. Well,
Yeah.
well, here's what's amazing is that like everything I'm saying is documented. It's not like I'm making it up.
Yeah.
It doesn't penetrate medical practice. Most addiction specialists don't even know what I'm talking about because they're
Yeah.
not trained in it. Now, why not? Well, I give you a number of reasons, but there's two major ones. One is from the point, let's say that you're a parent and your adult child becomes addicted. Emotionally, which is easier for you to hear? That he's got a genetic problem that you couldn't help passing on, or that his problem is due to early childhood experience in your home.
Mm.
That's challenging. It's much easier and soothing to rely on a genetic explanation
Yeah.
from the emotional, psychological point of view. Secondly, it's simpler because we like to think in simple things. We like to think A causes B. So I give you an explanation like genes. Oh, okay, I get it. That's simple enough. Trauma is a much more complex thing to think about. Thirdly, from a social point of view, if we took to heart the science that I'm translating to you now, we would change everything. We would
Mm.
change how we support young parents. We would change how we look after pregnant women. We would change how we run our schools, how we treat kids who are in trouble, uh, how we create, like in Australia. Do I have to tell you about how the Aboriginal people were treated?
Can we talk a bit about that? Because I think that's a fascinating thing. I mean, what that what they've had to endure is shocking.
Well, it is the same in Canada. So in Canada, 30% of the jail population is Aboriginal Canadians, Indigenous Canadians. They make up 5% of the population. And in Australia, a young male who is Aborigine has got something like a 16 to 19% risk, not percent, fold, and 16 to 19-fold risk of being jailed than a Caucasian male. Why? Because the way that colonialism has traumatized these people and how
Mm.
racism continues to traumatize them. So it's not surprising that the most traumatized segments of the population are the ones who are the most likely to fall victim to addiction.
Yes.
But for us to recognize that, we'd have to change the whole social system.
Mm.
We'd have to get rid of inequality. We'd have to get rid of laws that discriminate. We'd have to rethink our whole approach to social relationships. Much easier to say, well, it's got to be the genes. Nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
So the genes kind of give us that easy out. On the other hand, let me ask you this question. Going back to my query to you about if you're a parent, if you're really a thoughtful parent, what would you rather believe? That your child's got genetically determined disorder, or that he's got a problem of development because of early childhood experience, and that given the right conditions, he can develop in a much better way.
Yeah, the
Yeah, so the
second
second one
one.
is liberating,
Yes.
but emotionally it's more challenging.
Yeah.
It's also not only liberating, it's also having to be scientifically right. So, but it's harder for people to hear that.
Absolutely. And you say the first 3 years of a child's life is so unbelievably pertinent. What 3 to 7, what are the things that we should be doing to allow our kids to flourish?
Well, so in my book on addiction, I have an appendix which is called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts. And I have an appendix on the prevention of addiction. And
Yeah.
I'm saying that the prevention of addiction needs to begin at the first prenatal visit because we know that if you stress animals in the laboratory or women who are stressed, their children during pregnancy are more likely to have addicted kids or mentally challenged kids in general later on. So therefore, we would make really sure that the mental health and emotional balance and stress support is available for pregnant women. So the prenatal visit wouldn't just be about blood tests and ultrasounds and scans. It would also be about Okay, let's look at your life and what stresses are you under and how can we help you support you? And that also means social support when necessary. It would mean families that are traumatized, they get a special support to deal with their trauma. So what do you do in Australia or Canada? We jail these kids and these
Mm.
adults. What they need is support. They need loving support to overcome the trauma that our societies have multi-generationally imposed and continue to impose on them. So that's what would be necessary. Then, and this is a hard one in modern society, because if you look at how people used to parent, for example, how Canadian Indigenous people used to parent, or Australian Aboriginal people used to parent, they used to parent in hunter-gatherer groups like a tribe, and kids had multiple adults looking after them. And they used to play out in nature, free play out there in nature. And the mothers would breastfeed for 2 to 5 years.
Mm.
The average weaning age was 4 years in hunter-gatherer groups. Kids are designed for that, which
Mm.
means mothers need a lot of support. So they're not at home alone, parenting in isolation. That's totally unnatural.
Yes.
But they need a lot of social support to be around other supportive adults. And they need the financial support, at least for one parent, to be at home with the kid for as long as possible.
Mm.
Ideally, in the beginning, it's the mom because she's the only one that can breastfeed.
Yeah.
Um, but in other words, we would look at the literature of how the brain develops and we would apply it simple lessons and we would put the dollars and the money there, which would save us a lot of expenditure later on in terms of mental health, physical health, and legal costs. So, in other words, we would really support. Now, we would also make sure, and this is another book of mine that if you haven't read it, and if you got 2 kids, you got to read this book. It's got Hold On to Your Kids, Why Parents Need to Matter More Than Peers. And I wrote this with a brilliant psychologist friend of mine who's the main author, Gordon Neufeld. In our society, kids get too attached to other kids too early,
Mm.
to their detriment, because the primary attachment should be to nurturing adults. So in our society, we have children influencing each other far too early.
Yes.
Now you have, for the first time in history, you have a situation where generations of kids are more influenced by immature peers than by the healthy adults in their lives.
Mm.
I'm not going to, we can talk about it, but that's what's going on. So we need to make sure that the primary attachments of our children remain to healthy, nurturing adults. And that
How?
also means keeping our
Yeah.
kids off those damn cell phones
Yes.
and social media. If I was raising a kid today, I wouldn't let them go near a screen for 7 or 8 years.